The icy winds howled across the barren expanse of an alien planet, a world bathed in perpetual twilight and endless snowstorms. Captain Elias Voss stumbled through the blizzard, his survival suit failing as frostbite claimed his fingers. He was stranded after a crash landing, a lone human, marooned on this frozen frontier. Elias had heard whispers about this planet during his time aboard the interstellar vessel Aegis. It was home to strange life forms, beings that many dismissed as primitive or irrelevant. To most of humanity's galactic neighbors, Earthlings were nothing more than fragile creatures who barely scraped by in their tiny corner of the universe. They were underestimated at every turn, mocked for their short lifespans, laughed at for their reliance on emotion over logic, and ignored when it came to discussions of power and progress. But now, here he was, nearly dead, freezing in the snowstorm, with no one but himself to rely on. His ship, once a proud symbol of human ingenuity, lay shattered in pieces behind him, buried under layers of ice. The cold seeped into his bones, slowing his thoughts and dulling his senses. Every step felt heavier than the last. Like gravity itself conspired against him. As he trudged forward, the wind carried faint sounds, soft murmurs that seemed almost musical though distorted by the storm. At first, Elias thought it might be hallucinations brought on by hypothermia, but then he saw them, shadows moving just beyond the veil of falling snow, tall and lithe figures gliding effortlessly through the chaos. Their movements were fluid, graceful even, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. He called out, his voice hoarse and weak, swallowed almost instantly by the roar of the storm. One of the figures paused, tilting its head toward him, then another joined it, and another, until a small group stood watching him from a distance. Their silhouettes were humanoid, but not quite humanly, as if their skin reflected the dim light of the distant sun. Their eyes glowed softly, piercing through the darkness like twin stars. Elias collapsed to his knees, too exhausted to move any further. As consciousness began to slip away, he felt warmth, not physical warmth, but something deeper, a sense of being noticed. These beings weren't attacking him. They weren't ignoring him either. Instead, they simply observed, their glowing eyes filled with curiosity rather than malice. Just as blackness threatened to claim him, one of the figures stepped closer. She knelt beside him, her hand hovering above his chest without touching it. Her touch would have been welcome, but she didn't need to make contact for Elias to feel a strange energy emanating from her. It wasn't heat exactly, it was more like hope, a spark reigniting within him despite the odds stacked against survival. Then came the twist as his vision blurred. Elias caught sight of markings on the woman's arm, symbols etched into her glowing skin, pulsing faintly with rhythm. And somehow, impossibly, those symbols looked familiar. They resembled ancient runes carved into stone tablets back on Earth, relics of civilizations long forgotten. How could these alien women bear such resemblance to humanity's earliest history? Before he could ponder it further, darkness claimed him. When he woke again, he found himself surrounded by faces, dozens of them, all female, all watching him, with expressions that mingled concern and intrigue. He realized two things immediately. He was alive, and he owed his life to these mysterious beings. But why had they saved him? What did they want from him, and what secrets lay hidden beneath those glowing symbols? For now, Elias could only lie there, shivering yet grateful, as the tribe tended to him. Somewhere deep inside he knew this encounter was no accident. This was the beginning of something far greater than mere survival. It was the start of a story that would change everything. That when Elias opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the freezing snowstorm. Instead, he found himself lying on a soft, woven mat inside what appeared to be a large, dome-shaped structure. The air was warm and smelled faintly of herbs, though he couldn't identify them. Light filtered through translucent panels in the ceiling, casting soft hues across the room. He blinked several times, trying to adjust to the sudden change from the icy wilderness. Around him stood several of the alien women who had saved him. They were tall, elegant, and radiated an aura of calm authority. Their glowing symbols still pulsed gently, but now they seemed less intimidating and more mesmerizing. One of them stepped closer, a woman with shimmering silver hair that cascaded down her back like liquid moonlight. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment Elias felt as though she could see straight into his soul. "Human," she said, her voice melodic yet firm. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, delivered with a mix of curiosity and caution. Elias struggled to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his frostbitten limbs. "I'm Captain Elias Voss," he managed to say, his voice raspy. "Thank you for saving me." The woman tilted her head slightly, studying him intently. Then she gestured toward one of her companions, who handed her a small bowl filled with steaming liquid. She offered it to Elias without hesitation. "Drink," she commanded softly, though wary. Elias accepted the bowl. The liquid inside smelled earthy and sweet, almost familiar. As he sipped it, warmth spread through his body, easing some of the stiffness in his muscles. Whatever this concoction was, it worked wonders and fast. "My name is Sailor," the silver-haired woman finally said, placing the empty bowl aside. "You are among the Lirathi, guardians of this land." "The Lirathi," Elias repeated, slowly, rolling the unfamiliar word around in his mind. Your people are incredible. I don't know how you survived out there in that storm. Sayla's expression softened slightly, though her gaze remained sharp. We have lived here for generations. This world is harsh, but it has shaped us. Your kind does not belong here. Why did you come? Elias hesitated. How much should he reveal? These beings clearly possessed intelligence far beyond what humanity had assumed, but their intentions were still unclear. Were they truly benevolent, or did they have another agenda? Before he could answer, another member of the tribe approached, this one younger, her features softer but equally striking. She carried something in her hands, fragments of metal and wires salvaged from the wreckage of Elias's ship. She placed them on the ground before him, her glowing eyes wide with intrigue. What is this? She asked, her voice tinged with wonder. It hums with energy, but we cannot decipher its purpose. Elias glanced at the pieces of his ship, feeling a pang of loss. That vessel had been his lifeline, his only connection to home. Now it lay scattered and useless, reduced to scraps in the hands of these aliens. Yet, instead of anger, he felt a flicker of hope. If they were curious about human technology, perhaps they weren't entirely hostile. It's part of my ship, he explained cautiously. A machine designed to travel between stars. We use it to explore new worlds. The younger woman exchanged a glance with Sayla, who frowned thoughtfully. To travel between stars, Sayla murmured, almost to herself. Such ambition, such fragility. Elias bristled at the comment, though he tried to hide it. Fragile. Was that how they saw him? His pride stirred, pushing back against the dismissive tone. Fragile, maybe, he admitted, meeting Sayla's gaze squarely. But humans adapt, we survive, we overcome challenges others wouldn't even attempt. Sayla raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his boldness. And yet, you nearly perished. In our storm without us you would be dead. Her words stung, but Elias refused to let them break him. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice steady despite his weakened state. Yes, I needed your help, and I won't deny that your strength surpasses mine. But tell me this, how many worlds have your people explored? How far have you ventured beyond this frozen land? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Sayla's face. The younger woman shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the others. Clearly this was a topic they hadn't expected or perhaps didn't wish to discuss. We protect what is ours, Sayla replied after a pause. This planet is sacred. To leave it would mean abandoning our duty. Elias nodded slowly, understanding dawning within him. These women weren't explorers. They were guardians, bound to their world and its mysteries. But their isolation came at a cost. They lacked the drive to push boundaries, to seek answers beyond their borders. That's where humans differ, Elias said quietly, his tone resolute. We may be fragile, but we're also relentless. When faced with limits, we find ways to break them. When confronted with the unknown, we reach out instead of turning away. That's why we build ships like Minivan if they fail sometimes. The room fell silent as the Lurathai absorbed his words. For a moment, Elias wondered if he'd gone too far, if his defiance would cost him their goodwill. But then Sayla spoke again, her voice tinged with something new: curiosity. You claim your kind seeks knowledge, she said. Prove it. Show us what makes humans so determined. It was a challenge, plain and simple, and Elias knew exactly how to respond. He gestured toward the fragments of his ship. Help me repair it, Tor, at least salvage what remains and I'll show you. Together we can create something neither of us could achieve alone. The Lirathai exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Sayla nodded. Very well, we will assist you. But know this, if you betray our trust, there will be consequences. Elias smiled faintly, relief washing over him. He didn't fully understand these beings yet, but one thing was clear. They were beginning to see him not just as a fragile outsider, but as someone capable of surprising them. As the Lirathai set to work gathering tools and materials, Elias realized this was only the beginning. These women had saved his life, but now he had the chance to prove himself, to show them that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its resilience, it was its heart. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity, as Elias worked alongside the Lirathai to salvage what remained of his ship. At first, communication was slow and fraught with misunderstandings. The Lirathai had no concept of human technology, and Elias struggled to explain even the simplest mechanisms. But despite the language barrier and cultural differences, both sides were determined to bridge the gap. Elias quickly discovered that the Lirathai possessed abilities far beyond anything he'd imagined. They could manipulate energy in ways that, if they defied logic, channeling it through their glowing symbols to create heat, light, and even small bursts of force. When Elias demonstrated how electricity powered his ship's systems, the younger members of the tribe, especially a curious woman named Kelly, were fascinated. She spent hours examining the wires and circuits, her glowing eyes alight with wonder. But not everyone shared Kelly's enthusiasm. Some of the older Lirathai, including Sayla, remained skeptical. They viewed Elias's efforts with cautious detachment, questioning whether helping him repair his ship was wise. Why should we aid you in leaving? one elder asked pointedly, during a communal gathering. Your kind comes, takes what it wants, and leaves destruction in its wake. What assurance do we have that you will not harm our world? Elias felt the weight of their mistrust pressing down on him. He knew humanity's history wasn't perfect. They had made mistakes, exploited resources, and clashed with other species. But he also believed that humans were capable of learning, growing, and doing better. Now more than ever, he needed to prove that. I'm not here to take anything from you, Elias said earnestly, standing before the assembled group. His voice carried both conviction and humility. I came here by accident, lost and alone. You saved my life when you didn't have to. All I want is to return home to tell my people about your strength, your wisdom, and your kindness. Sayla studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. And if we help you leave, what then? Will your people come seeking us? Will they bring warships and weapons? Elias hesitated. He couldn't promise that humanity would never pose a threat. He wasn't naive enough to believe such guarantees were possible. But he could offer something else, something deeply personal. If anyone tries to harm this world, I'll stop them, he vowed, locking eyes with Sayla. I swear it. Not because I owe you my life, but because I respect what you've built here. This planet is sacred to you, and I'll fight to protect it. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sayla nodded slowly, though her gaze remained piercing. We will continue to assist you for now. But do not mistake our cooperation for trust. Prove yourself worthy of it. With that, the work resumed. Over the next few days, Elias threw himself into the task of rebuilding his ship, driven by a mix of desperation and determination. The Lirathai contributed in unexpected ways, using their unique abilities to enhance its designs. Kelly in particular proved invaluable. Her curiosity knew no bounds, and she often surprised Elias with creative solutions to technical problems. One evening, as they worked together under the dim glow of bioluminescent lamps, Kelly paused to examine a piece of machinery. Hums like the wind, she said softly, running her fingers over the metal surface. It feels alive. It's just a machine, Elias replied with a faint smile. But it's designed to carry life, to keep people safe while traveling through space. Kelly tilted her head thoughtfully. To travel so far, to leave everything behind. Does it not frighten you? Elias considered her question. Sometimes, he admitted, but fear doesn't stop us. It pushes us to be better, to prepare for whatever comes next. That's what makes humans different. We face our fears instead of running from them. Kelly's eyes softened, and for a moment Elias saw a flicker of admiration in her gaze. Perhaps there is more to your kind than we realized, she murmured. As the repairs progressed, tensions began to rise within the tribe. Some Lirath grew increasingly uneasy about aiding Elias, fearing the consequences of letting a stranger leave their world. Others, inspired by Kelly's enthusiasm, argued that helping him could lead to new opportunities for their people. The debate reached a boiling point one night when an elder confronted Elias directly. You speak of courage and resilience, the elder said, her tone sharp. Yet your ship lies broken, your mission failed. How can you claim victory when all you have done is survive? Elias clenched his fists, fighting back frustration. Survival isn't failure, it's the foundation of everything else. Without survival, there's no chance to rebuild, to learn, to grow. Humans don't give up, no matter how many times we fall. The elder stared at him, unyielding. Prove it. Show us that your survival means something more than mere endurance. That challenge ignited a spark within Elias. He realized that repairing his ship wasn't just about getting home, it was about proving humanity's worth to these beings who doubted him. With renewed focus, he devised a bold plan to combine human ingenuity with the Lirathi's energy manipulation abilities to create a hybrid propulsion system. It was risky, untested, and required absolute trust from both sides, but if it worked, it could change everything. When Elias presented the idea to Sayla, she listened silently, her expression guarded. If this fails, you will endanger us all, she warned. I know, Elias replied, meeting her gaze steadily. But if it succeeds, it will show you why humans are worth believing in. Sayla hesitated, then gave a single nod of approval. Do it. But remember, this is your test, not ours. As the Lirathai gathered around to witness the experiment, Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment of truth. If he succeeded, he might earn their trust and, perhaps even inspire them to see humanity in a new light. If he failed, the consequences would be dire. With trembling hands, Elias activated the hybrid system, holding his breath as the machine roared to life. Energy crackled through the air, blending human innovation with alien power in a dazzling display of light and sound. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a triumphant hum, the engine stabilized. Glowing brightly against the darkened sky, the Lirathai gasped in awe, their glowing symbols pulsing in sync with the machine's rhythm. Even Sayla looked astonished, her usual composure shaken. In that moment, Elias saw something shift, a glimmer of respect, a hint of belief, but the victory was short. As the engine powered down, a low rumble echoed across the landscape. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a shadow loomed on the horizon. Something or someone was approaching. What is that? Elias asked, dread settling in his chest. Sailor's voice was grim trouble. And now it seems we must face it together. The shadow on the horizon grew larger, its silhouette jagged and menacing against the dim twilight. It moved with unnatural speed, devouring the distance. Between itself and the Lirathi settlement, Elias felt a chill run down his spine, not from the cold this time, but from pure dread. Whatever was approaching wasn't natural. It radiated hostility, an aura of destruction that even the wind seemed to recoil from. Sailor stepped forward, her glowing symbols flaring brightly as she raised her hands in a defensive stance. The other Lirathi followed suit, forming a protective circle around the hybrid engine they had just created. Their unity was breathtaking, their energy pulsing, in harmony like a living symphony. Yet, despite their strengths, Elias could see tension in their movements, a flicker of fear beneath their calm exteriors. "What is it?" Elias asked again, his voice tight with urgency. He gripped a piece of salvaged metal instinctively, though he knew it wouldn't do much against whatever was coming. "It's a stormwalker," Sailor replied, her tone grim. "A creature born of chaos, drawn to disruption. We've seen them before. They feed on imbalance, tearing apart anything fragile." Elias frowned, piecing together her words. "You mean, it's here because of us, because we built the engine?" Sailor nodded sharply. "Your machine disrupted the planet's energy field. The stormwalker senses it, and now it comes to destroy." Guilt slammed into Elias like a physical blow. His attempt to prove humanity's ingenuity had inadvertently summoned a monster. He clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. "Then we'll stop it," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "We caused this, we'll fix it." Kelly turned to him, her glowing eyes wide with concern. "But how? Stormwalkers are unstoppable. Even our power isn't enough to fight them." Elias hesitated, his mind racing. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. Running or hiding wouldn't solve anything. They needed a plan, and fast. "Listen to me," he said, addressing both Kelly and Sailor. "Your energy is incredible, but it's scattered right now. If we combine it, focus it, we might stand a chance. Use your abilities to amplify the engine. It's not just a propulsion system anymore, it's a weapon." Sailor narrowed her eyes, skepticism etched onto her face. "And if it fails?" "What then?" "If it fails," Elias shot back, his voice steady, despite the stakes, "we'll still be no worse off than we are now. But if it works, we'll show that human innovation and your strength can achieve something neither of us could alone." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then Sailor exhaled sharply, her resolve hardening. "Very well. Do as you say, but know this: if you betray us, I will end you myself." Elias nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. There was no room for error now. The stormwalker arrived moments later, its form finally visible as it emerged from the swirling mist. It was massive, towering over the settlement like a living nightmare. Its body shimmered with chaotic energy, constantly shifting and reforming as though it couldn't decide what shape to take. Jagged tendrils lashed out at random, carving deep gouges into the icy ground. A low, guttural growl rumbled from its core, vibrating through the air like a warning. The Lirathi braced themselves, their glowing symbols blazing brighter than ever. Kelly stood beside Elias, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to channel her energy into the engine. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the stormwalker's roar. "No," Elias admitted honestly, "but we don't have a choice." With that, he activated the hybrid engine, its hum growing louder as it absorbed the Lirathi's combined power. The machine began to pulse with light, syncing with the rhythm of their glowing symbols. Energy crackled around it, forming a barrier that pushed back against the stormwalker's chaotic aura. The creature paused, tilting its head as though confused by the sudden resistance. Then, with a deafening screech, it lunged forward, its tendrils slicing through the air toward the group. "Now," Elias shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Sailor and the others unleashed their full strength, funneling waves of energy into the engine. The machine roared to life, transforming the raw power into a concentrated beam of light. Elias directed the beam toward the stormwalker, aiming for its core, the source of its chaotic energy. The impact was instantaneous. The beam struck the creature with explosive force, sending shockwaves rippling across the landscape. The stormwalker writhed in agony, its form destabilizing as the concentrated energy tore through its essence. For a brief, terrifying moment, it seemed as though the creature might retaliate, but then, with a final ear-splitting shriek, it collapsed into nothingness, dissolving into the icy winds. Silence fell over the settlement, broken only by the sound of labored breathing. The Lirathi lowered their arms, their glowing symbols dimming as exhaustion set in. Elias slumped to his knees, his body trembling from the effort. The engine sputtered and died, its task complete. Sailor approached him slowly, her expression unreadable. She knelt beside him, studying his face with an intensity that made him uneasy. "You did it," she said finally, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "You faced the impossible and you won." Elias shook his head weakly. "Not alone. Without your people I couldn't have done it." Sayla's gaze softened, a rare hint of vulnerability breaking through her stoic exterior. Perhaps there is truth in what you say about humans. You may be fragile, but your spirit, it burns brighter than I thought. Kelly joined them, her eyes shining with admiration. You proved yourself today, Elias, to all of us. As the weight of their words sank in, Elias realized this was more than just a victory, it was a turning point. The Larethi were beginning to see humanity differently, not as reckless invaders but as partners capable of achieving greatness when united. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow-covered land, Elias couldn't but shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The Stormwalker had been defeated, but the challenges ahead would test them even further. And yet, for the first time since arriving on this alien world, Elias felt hope not just for himself, but for the future of both their peoples. The aftermath of the Stormwalker's defeat left the settlement eerily quiet, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. The Larethi moved cautiously, tending to their wounded and repairing damage caused by the chaotic creature. Though victorious, they were far from unscathed. Several members of the tribe bore injuries, some minor, others severe, and the strain of channeling so much energy had left them physically drained. Elias, too, felt the toll of the battle. His body ached, and exhaustion weighed heavily on him, but he refused to rest until he understood what had truly happened. As night fell, Sayla called for a gathering inside the largest dome structure. The air was thick with tension, punctuated only by the soft hum of glowing symbols that still pulsed faintly on the Larethi's skin. Elias sat cross-legged among them, feeling both welcomed and out of place. He knew this meeting wasn't just about healing, it was about deciding what came next. We have faced many dangers in our time, Sayla began, her voice steady but tinged with unease. But never has one been summoned by an act of creation. The Stormwalker came because of the hybrid engine, a machine born of two worlds, blending human ingenuity with our power. It disrupted the balance of this planet. Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous. Kelly shifted uncomfortably beside Elias, her glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. Does that mean we should abandon the engine? She asked softly. Was it wrong to help him? Sayla hesitated before answering, her gaze lingering on Elias. It is not wrong to seek progress or to aid another in need, but every action carries consequences. We must decide whether continuing down this path is worth the risk. Elias leaned forward, his voice firm despite his wariness. Abandoning the engine won't undo what's already happened. If anything, it would leave us vulnerable if another Stormwalker or something worse returns. What we did today proves that combining our strengths can overcome even the greatest threats. But at what cost? One of the elders interjected sharply. Her voice carried the weight of centuries, each word laced with caution. You speak of unity, human, yet your kind has a history of exploiting those who trust you. How do we know you won't use our power for your own gain once you leave this world? The accusation stung, but Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he met the elder's piercing gaze head-on. I won't deny humanity's flaws, he admitted. We've made mistakes, terrible ones, but we also learn from them. I'm not here to take advantage of you. I'm here to survive. Yes, but also to show you that humans aren't defined solely by our failures. We're defined by how we rise after falling. His honesty seemed to disarm the elder, if only slightly. She glanced at Sayla, who remained silent, her expression unreadable. The room grew quieter, the weight of the decision pressing down on everyone. Kelly broke the silence, her voice filled with quiet conviction. He's right. Look at what we accomplished together today. Without Elias, the Stormwalker might have destroyed us, and without us, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Isn't that proof enough that we're stronger together? A murmur rippled through the group, some nodding in agreement while others frowned in doubt. Sayla finally spoke, her tone measured, but resolute. Perhaps there is truth in what you say, Kelly, but trust is fragile, and risks remain. If we continue working with Elias, we must be vigilant, not just of the dangers outside, but within ourselves. With that, the meeting ended, leaving Elias to reflect on the gravity of their situation. The Larethi weren't fully convinced, but they hadn't rejected him either. It was progress, albeit fragile. As the others dispersed, Kelly stayed behind, her glowing eyes fixed on him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. You truly believe we can change things, don't you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I do, Elias replied, leaning back against the woven wall of the dome. But it won't be easy. Change never is. Your people are incredible. Kelly, strong, wise, and connected to this world in ways I'll never fully understand. But maybe humans can offer something too. A different perspective, a way of thinking that could benefit us all. Kelly smiled faintly, though her expression remained thoughtful. You've given us much to consider. Just remember we're watching. You, Elias, all of us. Over the next few days, work resumed on the hybrid engine, but the atmosphere had shifted. The Larethi were more cautious now, their movements deliberate and measured. They worked alongside Elias, but there was an undercurrent of tension, shared awareness that they were walking a fine line between collaboration and catastrophe. Elias threw himself into the task, Determined to prove his sincerity, he spent hours explaining the intricacies of human technology, teaching the Lirathi how to integrate their energy with mechanical systems. In return, they shared their knowledge of the planet's unique properties, revealing secrets about its energy fields and ecosystems that fascinated him. Slowly, a mutual respect began to form, bridging the gap between their worlds. But the pressure mounted as new challenges arose. The Stormwalker's presence had destabilized the planet's energy field, causing unpredictable fluctuations in the environment. Glaciers shifted unpredictably, creating avalanches that threatened nearby settlements. Strange storms brewed on the horizon, their winds carrying an unnatural chill. The Lirathi believed these phenomena were warning signs that the planet was resisting the intrusion of foreign forces. One evening, as Elias reviewed schematics with Kelly, Sayla approached them, her expression grim. "The imbalance is spreading," she said. "If we cannot restore harmony, this world may reject us entirely." "What does that mean?" Elias asked, dread creeping into his chest. "It means the storms will worsen, the land will fracture, and life here will become unsustainable for everyone." Elias felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. This wasn't just about fixing his ship anymore. It was about ensuring the survival of both their peoples. He looked at Kelly, then at Sayla, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we'll find a way to fix it, together." The three of them stood in silence, the enormity of the task ahead sinking in. They were running out of time, and the stakes had never been higher. Humanity's future and the fate of the Lirathi depended on their ability to unite. As the first flakes of another snowstorm began to fall, Elias realized this was no longer just his story. It was theirs, a tale of resilience, sacrifice, and hope in the face of overwhelming odds. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: failure was not an option. The snowstorm raged outside, battering the settlement with relentless fury. Inside the dome, Elias, Sayla, Kelly, and a small group of Lirathi gathered around the hybrid engine, their faces illuminated by its faint glow. The machine had become more than just a tool. It was a symbol of their fragile alliance, a testament to what could be achieved when two vastly different species worked together. But now, it carried an even greater burden, the key to restoring balance to the planet. Elias stared at the schematics he'd drawn on a sheet of translucent material salvaged from his ship. His hands trembled not from fear, but from exhaustion. Days of non-stop work had taken their toll, yet there was no time to rest. The planet's energy field continued to destabilize, and every passing hour brought them closer to disaster. "We need to amplify the engine's output," Elias explained, pointing to a section of the diagram. "If we can channel enough energy into the planet's core, we might stabilize the imbalance caused by the Stormwalker." Sayla frowned, her glowing symbols dimming slightly as she processed his words. "Such power would require all of us, and even then, success is not guaranteed." "It's risky," Elias admitted, "but it's our only chance. If we don't try, this world will tear itself apart." Kelly stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Then let's do it. We've come this far, we can't give up now." Her confidence bolstered Elias, though he couldn't ignore the unease radiating from some of the older Lirathi. They exchanged wary glances, their glowing eyes flickering uncertainly. These women had lived their entire lives bound to this planet, protecting its sacred balance. Trusting a human to intervene in such a profound way went against everything they believed. Sayla noticed their hesitation and turned to address them directly. "This decision is not mine alone to make," she said, her tone firm but compassionate. "We are guardians of this land, yes, but we are also survivors. If we refuse to act, we condemn ourselves to destruction. Is that what you wish?" One of the elders spoke up, her voice trembling with emotion. "I fear the cost of failure. What if this plan harms the planet further? What if it destroys us all?" Elias clenched his fists, fighting back frustration. He understood their fears. It wasn't easy to entrust your home to someone who didn't belong. But he also knew that doing nothing was no longer an option. Taking a deep breath, he stepped toward the elder, his voice calm but resolute. "I won't lie to you," he said. "There is a risk. I can't promise that everything will go perfectly. What I can promise is that I'll do everything in my power to protect this world and your people, because that's what humans do. When faced with impossible odds, we dig deeper, fight harder, and find solutions where none seem to exist." His words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the elder nodded, her glowing symbols brightening slightly. "Very well," she said quietly. "We will trust you for now." Relief washed over Elias, though he knew the hardest part was still ahead. With everyone's agreement secured, the group sprang into action. The Lirathi formed a circle around the engine, their hands raised as they began to channel their energy. Kelly stood beside Elias, guiding him through the process while keeping the others synchronized. Their glowing symbols pulsed in unison, creating a mesmerizing display of light and power. Elias activated the engine, its hum growing louder as it absorbed the Lirathi's energy. The machine vibrated beneath his touch, responding to the surge of power coursing through it. He adjusted the controls carefully, directing the amplified energy toward the planet's core. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the wind outside howled louder, as though resisting the intrusion. "Hold steady," Elias shouted over the noise, sweat dripping down his face. "We're almost there." The strain was palpable. The Lirathai grimaced, their bodies shaking under the effort of maintaining the connection. Kelly's grip tightened on Ilias's arm, her glowing eyes locked onto his. "Don't stop," she urged, her voice strained but determined. "Keep going." Finally, with a deafening roar, the engine released a massive burst of energy. A wave of light erupted outward, spreading across the landscape like liquid fire. The trembling ceased, and for a moment, everything fell silent. Elias staggered backward, collapsing to his knees as the engine powered down. The Lirathai lowered their arms, their glowing symbols dimming as exhaustion overtook them. No one spoke. They simply waited, holding their breath as the storm outside began to subside. Slowly, the winds died down, revealing a sky filled with stars. The unnatural chill dissipated, replaced by the crisp, familiar cold of the planet's natural climate. One by one, the Lirathai stepped outside, their expressions awestruck as they gazed at the restored horizon. "It worked," Kelly whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, Ilias. You saved us." Ilias shook his head, struggling to stand. "Not me," he corrected gently. "All of us. Together." Sailor approached him, her glowing symbols pulsing softly once more. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression unreadable but her gratitude was undeniable. "You have proven yourself worthy of our trust, human," she said quietly. "Your kind may be fragile, but your spirit, it is unbreakable." For the first time since arriving on this alien world, Elias felt a sense of belonging. The Lirathai no longer saw him as an outsider or a threat, they saw him as an outsider, a partner in their fight for survival. And in return, he saw them not as mysterious beings to be feared, but as equals whose strength and wisdom rivaled his own. As dawn broke over the icy plains, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of gold and pink, Elias realized something profound. Humanity's greatest asset wasn't its technology or ingenuity, was its ability to connect, to inspire, and to unite even the most unlikely allies. The days that followed the restoration of the planet's balance were filled with quiet reflection. The storms had subsided, leaving behind a world that seemed almost reborn. The air felt lighter, the skies clearer, and the icy landscape gleamed under the soft glow of the twin suns. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, peace reigned. Over the Lirathai settlement, Elias stood at the edge of the village, gazing out across the frozen expanse. His body still bore the scars of his ordeal, cuts and bruises that would take weeks to heal, but his spirit was unbroken. He watched as Kelly walked toward him, her silver hair catching the light like strands of starlight. Her glowing symbols pulsed faintly, a reminder of the bond they had forged through shared struggle. "You look thoughtful," she said, joining him at the edge of the cliff. "What are you thinking about?" Elias smiled faintly, though there was a tinge of sadness in his expression. "Home," he admitted. "I've been so focused on surviving, on fixing things here. But now, I can't help wondering when or if I'll ever see Earth again." Kelly placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm despite the cold. "You've earned your place among us, Elias. If you wish to stay, we would welcome you." Her words stirred something deep within him, a longing for connection, for belonging. But he shook his head gently. "As much as I appreciate that, as much as I've come to care about all of you, Earth is where I belong. My people need to hear about this place, about what's possible when we work together. They need hope." Kelly nodded slowly, understanding flickering in her glowing eyes. "Then we will help you finish repairing your ship. It's the least we can do after everything you've done for us." True to their word, the Lirathai threw themselves into the final stages of rebuilding Elias's vessel. With their combined efforts, the task went faster than expected. The hybrid engine, now stabilized and refined, hummed softly beneath the ship's hull, a testament to the collaboration between human ingenuity and alien power. As the last piece clicked into place, Elias felt a bittersweet mix of pride and sorrow. On the morning of his departure, the entire tribe gathered to see him off. Sailor stood at the forefront, her usual stoicism softened by a hint of emotion. "You leave as more than just a guest, Elias," she said, her voice carrying the weight of farewell. "You leave as a friend and ally. Remember what you've learned here, and may it guide you wherever you go." "I won't forget," Elias promised, meeting her gaze squarely. "And neither will my people. When I return to Earth, I'll tell them about the Lirathai, about your strength, your wisdom, and your kindness. Maybe someday, others will come not as invaders, but as friends." Sailor inclined her head, a rare smile touching her lips. "Until then, may the stars watch over you." Kelly stepped forward next, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Will you remember me?" She asked quietly. "How could I forget?" Elias replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You showed me that even in the harshest places, there's beauty and hope. Thank you for believing in me, for trusting me." Kelly embraced him tightly, her warmth lingering long after she pulled away. "Safe travels, Elias, and know this. If you ever find yourself lost again, you'll always have a home here." As Elias climbed aboard his ship, He took one last look at the Lyrathi. Their glowing symbols pulsed in unison, a silent farewell that resonated deeply within him. Then, with a final wave, he activated the engines. The ship lifted off smoothly, its hybrid propulsion system roaring to life as it soared into the sky. From the viewport, Elias watched the planet grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely, swallowed by the vastness of space. Though he was alone once more, he didn't feel empty. Instead, he felt full of purpose, of gratitude, of hope. Weeks later, as the ship approached Earth's orbit, Elias recorded a message to transmit ahead of his arrival. His voice was steady, yet filled with conviction. To humanity, I write this from the edge of the unknown, having seen wonders beyond imagination. There is life out there, intelligent, compassionate, and strong. They saved me when I was nearly dead, freezing in the snowstorm, and together we achieved the impossible. This proves something I've always believed. Humanity isn't defined by its flaws, but by its capacity to rise above them. We are explorers, creators, survivors, but most importantly, we are connectors, bridges between worlds, cultures, and ideas. Let this be our legacy. When Elias finally touched down on Earth, he was greeted not just as a survivor, but as a messenger of hope. His story spread quickly, inspiring countless others to dream of collaboration rather than conquest. Humanity began reaching out to the stars with open hands instead of clenched fists. Guided by the lessons Elias had brought back from the frozen frontier, and somewhere, light years away, the Lyrathi watched the skies, their glowing symbols pulsing softly in anticipation. They knew that while their paths might diverge, the bond they had formed with one fragile, determined human would echo through the ages, a testament to the power of unity, courage, and trust. In the end, Elias realized that the greatest journey wasn't across galaxies, but within himself. By proving humanity's worth to the Lyrathi, he had also rediscovered his own faith in the potential of his species. And as he gazed up at the night sky, he whispered a single thought: humanity. Heck yeah.